Well, when you
Think
say
about that for a minute.
spiritual, like what makes you draw that conclusion that they're spiritual?
What's the obvious? I mean, spiritual may be the wrong word. Supernatural. They're beyond nature as we understand it. I mean, obviously they are. I mean, just chart their physical behavior. It doesn't, it goes outside of what we understand about physics. No visible means of propulsion, coming at indescribable speed, hitting the ocean, continuing at speeds that are impossible undersea. I mean, in other words, if I take a 9mm round or 7.62 by 39 and shoot you at 50 yards underwater in a swimming pool, and it's even more intense in salt water because it's denser, you could catch the bullet if it even makes it to you, right? So if you have a craft, any object underwater that's traveling at 500 knots as measured by sonar, right there you're challenging our understanding of physics. Like, what is that? How can that be? So yeah,
they've tracked that. They've tracked things going 500 knots under the sea.
Yeah, really. Yeah, much faster than any object can actually go undersea. Yo, for sure. Oh yeah, there's a lot of stuff going on underwater, and a lot. And there's video of these things coming out of the sky into the water and also emerging from the water.
Right.
Yeah. So
it's all so blurry though.
I don't think it's
the
that
transmedium video.
Yeah, I don't think some of it's that blurry. I think some of it's crystal clear.
We just don't have access to it. Is that what you mean?
Yeah.
Just we haven't seen it.
Correct.
So they have some stuff.
For sure. So, but there's just a lot going on underwater, and it's measured. And so, whatever. I mean, these are all, again, this is like the most obvious observable level of it. But then you just ask yourself, like, what is this actually? And, if there's been extensive knowledge of this for decades, like maybe 80 years at least, if not going back to the 30s, 90 years, to what end? So there are two possible explanations, obvious explanations. The first is the one you often hear, which is this is so heavy that if the public were to know about it, it would be just disruptive. It would be too scary. Like, you don't want to scare people for no good reason. There's nothing we can do about it. And you also don't want to suggest that, the U.S. military isn't capable of protecting the country, the homeland. And it does suggest that. If you can't control these objects in your airspace, and that's known, if they can't, that's known, okay? Then that suggests a limit to the power of the U.S. military, and you don't want to tell people that because then they won't believe that they're safe. I get it. But then there's a deeper level, which is like, okay, what's your relationship with these things? What is the U.S. government's relationship with these things? And there's evidence that there is a relationship and that it's a longstanding, and that raises a lot of questions about intent. And so, what is that? And I just personally decided, and people have been hurt by these things. That's a fact. That's a fact. It's a knowable fact. It's a provable fact. And killed. And I'm not saying millions of people have been killed by whatever these things are, but people have been killed, and it's known because it's working its way through the courts out of the VA. So, I don't know, an object that is by definition supernatural, it's above the laws of nature as we understand them, and that has resulted in the deaths of people. We don't spend enough time thinking about what that adds up to. Not good, actually, not good.
How many people do you think have died from these things?
I don't know, but I mean,
And is it radiation sickness? Is it what's the cause
So the
of
person
death?
that I talked to, I interviewed someone who was a Stanford medical school professor who's out there and worth talking to, by the way. And
You're talking about Gary Nolan?
that's exactly who I'm talking about. Who's effectively an expert witness in these cases, so he's an expert in brain injury. Do you know him?
Yeah.
Yeah. Entirely credible person. Checks all the boxes that I care about. He's got patents, so he's like a lot of Stanford University professors. He's independently rich. I mean, he flew to, I live in a remote place, and he flew to my place at his own expense because he wanted to tell his story. So he's got no profit motive here. He's the most highly credentialed person at the university, practically, at Stanford Medical School. We consider that a big deal. And he's worked on this for over 10 years, assessing the injuries to U.S. servicemen from being in close proximity to these objects or having contact with these objects. And his conclusion, as you know because you've talked to him, is that there's some kind of energy coming off here that scrambles people's brains or kills them. And It's not exactly radiation, at least in his telling to me. So anyway, but the point is, people have died.
Yeah.
And so, you know, it does raise a lot of questions about, like, what the hell, right? What the hell? American citizens have died and you're hiding it? Why are you hiding that? Why would you hide that?
Perhaps because they don't have any explanations. Because it's so beyond our comprehension that they're still trying to piece it together. Like, I would wonder how much interaction they really do have with these things. Like, if I was from another planet or if I was some interdimensional being, I don't know how much I'd give a shit about the president. I don't know how much I'd give a shit about the government. I would probably look at this infantile race, this species, this bizarre territorial apes with thermonuclear weapons, this very weird species. I'd probably look at them as very chaotic, and I wouldn't really have much concern for who's running it, especially if they have the ability to travel at insane speeds and go undetected. And
well, it depends. Like that. Okay, so the template that you're using to understand this is like science fiction, right? These are an advanced race of beings from somewhere else. But the template that every other society before us has used is a spiritual one. Mm-hmm. There is a whole world that we can't see that acts on people, a supernatural world. It's acting on us all the time for good and bad. Every society has thought this before ours. In fact, every society in all recorded history has thought that until, I'll be specific, August 1945, when we dropped the atom bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And all of a sudden, the West is just officially secular. We're God. There is no God but us. And that's the world that we have grown up in. But that's an anomaly. Like, no one else has ever thought that. There's never been a society that thought that. Every other society has assumed, and they've had all kinds of different explanations, and the details differ. But the core idea does not differ, never has differed from caves until now, that we're being acted on by spiritual forces at all times. And so to someone born before or living before 1945, I think it would have been much more obvious that this is the thing that every society has written about. And in fact, that battle, that unseen battle around us, that spiritual battle, has like been the basis of every society, of every religion, not just Christianity. So like it just, once you discard your very, very recent assumptions, relatively speaking, about how the world works, you're like, well, that kind of seems like the obvious explanation.